blah blah oh, blah blah oh. Good evening, my beautiful audience, and welcome back to Pop Talk. I am Cody MacDonald, and I'm joined again with my best man at my future wedding, by the way.
Damn right.
I got KJ back. How are you?
How you doing, Cody?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good as well.
You literally just finished the finale of House of the Dragon?
Yes, I did. Every episode was actually great.
Every episode?
Yeah.
Nice.
I recommend it because I know that you haven't watched it.
I know, I haven't yet. Now that it's available and Veronica's kind of curious about it, I might actually give it a shot.
Has she also watched it?
No.
Like Game of Thrones, I mean.
She has. She likes it a little bit more than I do. I have controversial opinions about Game of Thrones where
I know.
I can't get into it. But I've heard really good things about this one where it's only one portion. It's not portion.
Yeah,
of
it
the map.
focuses on the Targaryens, one family.
One family, one clan, or whatever you call it. I don't know. But
I don't know where this series is going, but I will say that as far as the finale goes, I can see more families being involved in the future.
great. Okay. I appreciate it. It's well made. I don't know. There's a new Mike Flanagan show on Netflix that just dropped. It's like another
Like this year?
Yeah.
I haven't even heard of it.
I'm forgetting the name of it, to be honest. I mean, I find every year he always releases something kind of like Halloween spooky based. Like last year was Midnight Mass. This year it is called The Midnight Club.
Is it a sequel to Midnight Mass, like the Haunting of series?
From the looks of it, no.
Like a loose thing?
I don't think there's any connection. It doesn't say.
Oh.
I don't know. I like his stuff. It's got some decent stuff.
I still haven't watched Midnight Mass.
Oh, it's really good, actually. Not as great as
actually, not gonna lie, I've seen The Haunting of Hill House, but I have not even watched The Haunting of Bly Manor.
Yeah, Bly Manor's solid. There's some good stuff in it. I don't think anything will be as great as the Haunting at Hill House, but
No,
yeah,
that show is fantastic.
Oh yeah, that's really good. But we are here today to not talk about television shows. We are here to talk about movie theater experiences.
There's no better place to be.
Yeah, because
when the movie's good.
because dude, like, so everybody knows, like, you're quite the fanatic when it comes to going to see films in the theater.
I'll defend the theater no matter what. There's no better place or way to see a movie.
It's like your church, almost.
Yep.
It's like your sacred place. Like, how many movies do you think you've seen on the top of your head in the theater?
In theaters?
Mm-hmm.
Well, according to how I track how many movies I've seen, I would say over 1,000.
Wow. And you're close to almost, according to your letterbox, you're close to almost like 3,000 in total of films you've just seen in general. So you've seen
so I'd probably say about a third I've seen in theaters.
Wow,
yeah.
That's fucking impressive. Wow, that's insane. And you and I kind of bonded over that in high school, where we saw everything together.
I feel like, well, I don't want to jump the gun here, but I feel like that's where most of my best and worst experiences would have been with you at some point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Before we get to that, can you remember as far back the very first time you were ever in a movie theater?
It's not the best story.
Oh no, why?
Well, I mean, movie-wise.
Oh, was it, what movie
I
was
would
it?
I would say the furthest back I can remember, I think in the mid-90s there was a movie called Elmo and Grouchland that I saw with my parents.
Okay.
Just because I was a kid and they took me to see an Elmo movie. But the furthest back actual experience I can remember is probably when my mom was at work, my dad dropped my sister off at my grandparents be babysat because she wasn't old enough. And my dad took me at probably the age of like 4 or 5, maybe 6, to see Baby Geniuses.
Oh God, our both of us laughing just triggered me of that baby's laugh in that movie. The constant like, oh my God.
The same track they used throughout the whole movie.
Oh, PTSD. Oh my God. That movie is just wrong. It's so awkward. I don't know how it turned out the way it was.
I look back on it and I have fond memories for various reasons. I just have nostalgia over that movie now at this point.
So that was 98. Right? Like that was
I guess I was 93, so I was 5 years old. That's my first theater experience that I can at least remember.
Wow, you and I are kind of synced up in terms of timeline, because in 1998 the first movie that I can recall ever seeing in the theater was Babe, Pig in the City. The sequel to Babe.
I didn't see that till my parents bought the VHS.
Yeah. Can you believe that's George Miller?
Well, I can now because I know, but before I found that out, no.
That's insane to me. And I recall seeing it at the Devonshire Mall in Windsor. This was before the Cineplex opened, but there was a famous player that was on the opposite side. Because you know how in the back side, that's where the Cineplex is at? The front side is where this famous player used to be. That's where we saw it.
For any viewers that are watching us that are outside of Canada, Cineplex is the theater chain that is in Canada only.
Right. Well, there used to be a couple of AMCs in Toronto, but then I guess Cineplex might have bought it out.
Feel like I remember there being an AMC, but I thought AMC was only US. So I'm not 100% confident on that.
That's okay. It's funny, a year later, in 1999, I have very fond memories of like my mom finally actively taking me to films every so often, because that year alone, and to be honest with you, I think my love for going to the theaters, it makes sense coming from me, but like when I saw The Phantom Menace not only once but twice in the span of 2 weeks, like that made me fall in love with just the visual and sound experience of seeing a movie. I mean, say what you want, of course, about The Phantom Menace, but as a kid, I can recall the engine revving of the pod racing scene and just the lightsaber fight. I even recall saying, "Mom, my favorite scene in that movie was when it was during the lightsaber fight, and it was like," I didn't say a push-in on all their faces. That's too much of a filmmaking term.
Right.
But I remember saying, like, in the middle of their fight when it was like Darth Maul's face, then Qui-Gon's face, then Obi-Wan's face. And just that moment always, it was larger than life. It was just like their faces right up against me. Like humongous, like kind of like immersive experience.
Well, for anyone who's a Star Wars fan that's listening to this right now, the very first Star Wars movie I ever saw in theaters, even though I'm the same age as Cody, the same person I'm doing this podcast with right now, who saw Phantom Menace, and I'm assuming Attack of the Clones in theaters as well.
Yeah, and Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, so my first movie in the Star Wars franchise that I saw in theaters was actually Revenge of the Sith. I never saw episode 1 or 2 in theaters.
But that's awesome. A lot of people would be like, that's great.
Yeah, but I'm about to ruin that right now.
Oh, no.
By saying, so yeah, I've seen scenes of A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and I saw like the lightsaber fight at the end of Phantom Menace, and I saw, I think, the arena scene in Attack of the Clones. I think the first full movie I watched was Revenge of the Sith, and I'm very ashamed of myself for that.
I mean, you don't have to be ashamed too much.
I went back and rewatched everything in order, and now I appreciate everything properly.
I mean, I wouldn't be ashamed at all, really. A lot of Star Wars fans would be like, good. Revenge of the Sith is actually...
Well, it's the best of the prequel trilogy for sure. Well, it's in the top half for me as well. Like, I mean, obviously, I prefer it over Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, God. Don't even get me started. But I mean, yeah, that kind of ended off things on a dark note, but like the fact that I like seeing Star Wars films in the theater was always my favorite kind of pastime.
Even if the movie's bad, Star Wars is awesome on the big screen.
Exactly.
I'll admit that.
But going back, like in 1999, like I recall seeing Inspector Gadget, My Favorite Martian, Toy Story 2.
I didn't see Inspector Gadget till VHS either. As a kid, I saw a lot of the movies I saw as a kid for the first time was VHS.
Yeah. Yeah, no, me too. But for some reason, 1999 was a crazy year where, like, we just went a lot. Like, I saw Galaxy Quest in the theater. There was a famous Players that was in the same plaza. I mean, I know this is getting technical with Windsor, but this place doesn't even exist anymore. But like on Tecumseh
If anybody
Road.
didn't know, Cody and I are both from Windsor.
Oh no, everybody knows.
Originally.
Probably. Everybody knows. But there's a plaza where there was like a Zayres, a Winners, and a Famous Players in the corner, and yeah, that's where I grew up in that
Which,
area.
again, is owned by Cineplex.
Which is now owned by Cineplex, exactly. And we saw like Toy Story 2. No, actually, we saw Toy Story 2 at Forest Glade Cinema, which is not around anymore. That was the one that had like 3
Forest Glade
screens.
Cinema
Yeah.
was a big thing in my childhood. It was a little tiny theater that had 2 screens.
No, 3 screens.
Oh, eventually they added a third. Yes.
Oh, did they add a third? Okay, I've always known it being 3. Okay, interesting.
When I was really little, it was right by my house. At first there was only 2.
Okay.
But yes, eventually there was 3, which was the standard there. But I'm just saying, as a very little kid, I do remember before it was 3.
Okay. Were there any other early experiences for you that kind of stand out as being like, I love this place? Like,
As far as Forest Glade Cinemas?
or just going to the theater movies in general.
Actually, sorry to burst your bubble. I know we're about to get on the topic of best and worst experiences.
Yeah.
But I will say a bad experience I had at Forest Glade Cinemas was when I was 13. And in Canada, we have 14A. You can't be in... in the States, you got to be 13 to see a movie. In Canada, you got to be 14. And I remember going with my one friend who was 15 at the time, and I was 13. And so he was able to get in, but I wasn't. We tried to get into the movie starring... I can't remember who the adult male lead was, but I remember that the daughter in the movie was Dakota Fanning. It was a horror movie called Hide and Seek.
Oh, yeah,
I still to this day have not seen that movie. I just remember trying to get in at 13 and they denied me.
Wasn't it
We had
Robert?
to leave.
It was Robert De Niro, I think. Yeah. I think it was Robert De Niro.
You know what? Yeah, I think you're right. Yep.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen that movie.
Oh, well. Hey, this is very similar to something that happened with the both of us, but why don't you tell everybody the time that we saw together, and I say that with quotes, Kick-Ass.
Yep, I knew you were going there. Yeah, so again, we live in Canada. And I figured on my 17th birthday that I could get myself and all of my friends into the movie theater in the States because it's 17 for an R-rated movie. I was clearly an idiot for that. So we got to the theater, and what was there, 8 of us?
It was like
And
a
I
bunch
think
of us. Yeah.
maybe 4 of us were 17 at the time. So 4 of us walked in to see Kick-Ass, and at the time, I thought maybe since my mom had driven us across the States, she would have been able to walk in and do that. But since we tried to do that without her, they were very aware that nobody was old enough.
And what's so funny is that I don't know why we didn't think of just calling her if she had a cell or if she was... Because she killed time shopping, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
So I look back going like, why can't we just call her and be like, hey, can you like help us out, get the rest of us in?
No, but then I realized that in the States they have a specific policy
Oh, okay.
where like unless you're 17, you can't get in.
Wow.
In Canada, it's 18A. Unless you're 18, you can get with an adult. Like it's actually in the title itself for the rating of the movie.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I was
So,
definitely...
regardless, to the
Yeah.
audience, four of us, including me, for my birthday, went to see Kick-Ass, and I was very happy and pissed off all at once because the movie was great. I love the first Kick-Ass. But I was just pissed that half the people that came with me were in a different theater and they were theater jumping. One of the movies they saw, including Cody, was Clash of the Titans for a second time.
Yeah,
And at the time, I didn't even like the movie. And at the time, Cody did like the movie. And I don't know. I feel like I can assume he's not as high on the movie as he used to be.
definitely not as high, no.
Yeah.
That was just dumb action, epic schlock. And I recall, well, I will say this, that AMC theater was humongous. The auditorium was incredible. The seating arrangement
Yeah,
was...
the theater was great.
Oh, the seating was so much different, so much better. I even remember like the armrests, you can lift them up and you can almost like lie down. Like,
I mean, I'm pretty sure nowadays AMC is like Cineplex in Canada, where a lot of the theaters have the recliners and stuff now.
okay. Yeah, well, okay, well,
So, which causes there to be less seats regardless.
well, okay. In the past 5 years now, and you're the one that showed me this, I think we saw that movie Valerian. What,
And the City of a Thousand Planets.
you always finish like the long, like, okay, what's Borat?
Oh, you want me to do that?
All right, what's Borat?
Borat. Cultural Learnings of America for Make Benefit Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan. Except, hey, I'm gonna call myself out though. The sequel, the full title is actually harder to remember than the original, so I don't know that off by hand.
All right, fair enough. But I was gonna say the time we saw Valerian, you took me. It was in Windsor. This was like 5 years ago. It wasn't even that long ago. And this is when all the theaters in Windsor decked out every auditorium with the recliners, and
Yep.
it was amazing. You know, like the movie was so fucking boring that I fell asleep halfway through the movie. Like I took a 10-minute nap in the middle of the movie. I was like, and I woke up, didn't miss a thing. I liked it.
And again, for our audience, that never happens to Cody. We always are big film fans and watch the entire film. I'm gonna defend him here for a second.
Not necessarily.
Except for one movie. And I'm never gonna forget this.
Yep.
This whole topic's about theater experiences, right?
Yeah.
So I remember I bugged him to go to a movie after school, one high school on like a Tuesday, because in Canada Tuesdays are cheap days.
Yeah.
And I remember about halfway through the movie, he fell asleep.
Yeah.
He was awake for the ending, but I know he fell asleep. And that was for Bradley Cooper's Limitless.
Yes, you got it. Wow, your memory's great. Yep, I was out. I never fall asleep in movies. That's so
Neither
funny.
do I.
That's so
I think it's
funny.
only happened to me one time.
Do you
But,
remember
You're gonna have to come back to me on that because I can't quite remember which movie that was for. I'm gonna try to think while this goes on.
which one? What are you talking about?
No, I said I think I fell asleep during one movie in the theater ever.
Mhm.
But I'm drawing a blank on which movie that was, and I'll try to remember which one it was.
Okay. I was gonna say, do you remember the first movie that you and I saw together?
I believe so. Okay, one of these two movies I feel like is correct.
Okay. And I'll give you a hint. We weren't alone.
Oh, you're gonna give me a hint.
It wasn't just the two of us. There was a group.
Okay, so that narrows it down a little bit, except I'm still down to the same two that I thought. I was originally going to say, what was the name of the Terminator movie we saw together, but don't say anything else, just say the name of it.
You mean the one that came out in 2009?
Yes.
That was Terminator Salvation.
I couldn't think of Salvation. Okay. Okay, so the furthest memory I have of us seeing a movie together as a group is I believe the fourth Terminator, called Salvation. But if I were to really think about it, I think since it was like us inviting you to come with us, I'm pretty sure the first movie that we saw together, which was the beginning of the MCU, Iron Man 1.
You got it.
Yeah. Okay.
which I think is just ironic, like because
With how big the freaking franchise is now, yeah, it is.
like I didn't. You saw them all in the theater. You've seen every single MCU movie, but I didn't end up seeing the Incredible Hulk that came out like what, a year or so later or something like that.
Actually, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm gonna cut you off a little bit, only because that first Incredible Hulk movie relates to our topic right now of like best and worst theater experiences.
Oh, okay.
So, me going to see Incredible Hulk, it was actually, I had no idea it was even connected remotely to Iron Man. And I went with my uncle and my cousin. And we showed up. I remember there was a 7 p.m. showing and a 7:30 showing. We didn't know that there was a 7 p.m. showing. We had tickets to the 7:30. So we showed up to the theater for 7:30, and I remember, or no, sorry, it was something like that. And we showed up and like trailers were playing and then a movie started, but something was really off. We knew we were in the wrong room. And I remember we had to move over, and I'm like, oh man, we are gonna miss like the first 10 minutes of this movie. And we ended up showing up, and I think like the last 20 seconds of a trailer was playing, and then the movie was starting. We got so lucky. I would put that under lucky theater experiences.
Oh God. But I was gonna say, sorry to go back actually. When we saw Iron Man 2 later on, and we stuck around for the stinger where it shows like Thor's hammer, that was like the beginning of me going, "Oh, where's this going?" And
I mean, before that, we kind of knew that they were building to something, because I think after the first Iron Man, and I'm pretty sure it was just because I went to the theater to see The Incredible Hulk and then saw him at the end of it.
Right.
At that time, I didn't even know that there was a scene after the credits in the first Iron Man with Sam Jackson.
Yeah, me neither. I didn't know about that either.
It was after Incredible Hulk, and I think it was even after, I think it was around the time Iron Man 2 came out when we saw, like you just said, Thor's hammer.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was around that time where I was like, when the internet was becoming a big thing with like speculation and stuff. Mm-hmm. When I started hearing about the scene at the end of Iron Man, that's when I went back and looked through the credits. I'm like, oh wait, what's going on here?
Right.
And then I started thinking like, oh, Thor's hammer, all this stuff, and then Captain America was coming out, and then at the end of Captain America, at the end of the post credits, you, me, and our friend Troy, we stuck around, and we saw the very, very, very brief first tease for the first Avengers.
That's right. Yeah.
They show that at the end of the Captain America movie.
And I have to admit, dude, like, I mean, even though it took a good, like, I'd say 10, 11 years to really build up to everything, like, the very last, like, the climax of Infinity War was, and the ending of it was a great cliffhanger, and I'm happy I got to experience, like, a lot of those movies with you. And I recall right before we saw Endgame, we sat in the restaurant, and you and I just laid out, like, where we saw the like every single entry of the MCU leading up to that point, like who we saw it with, when did we see it, like just it was.
And I mean, to be fair, I would say after the year of like 2012 or 2013, most of the time you saw it with me.
Yeah, pretty much. It was only Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther that I saw just by myself, which was a little depressing because I would rather see it with friends. But
there's one more I saw without you.
What was the other one?
It was Volume 2 of Guardians.
Oh, that's right. But I didn't see it alone. I saw that with Veronica and Hunter. But
right, I went with my cousin back home. This was after I moved back to Windsor.
Right. I as you were talking, I just thought of one experience that was pretty awesome that my mom did for me. So we were big fans of the first two Austin Powers movies, and this is back in 2002 when Goldmember came out.
Oh, you've seen Austin Powers in theaters then?
So what happened was my mom picks me up from school, and she goes, "Hey, one of my residents needs to," because she was working as a PSW at the time. She said, "Oh, well, before we go home, one of my residents at work loves movie theater popcorn. I just need to go to the movie theater, pick up some popcorn. We'll bring it to her." I went, "Oh, okay." So we go to the theater. She's like, I need a hand with this stuff. Do you mind coming in with me?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." She goes in, and she's buying tickets. I'm like, "Okay, what's going on?" She walks over to the concessions, gets popcorn and a few drinks, and I'm like, "What's going on here? You're getting way more than I thought." And then she brings me to the auditorium, and I'm like, "Okay, we're seeing a movie. I get it. Okay, this is great. This is a nice surprise. Okay, what is it?" She said, "It's Scooby-Doo." I'm like, "Okay, I've seen advertisements for this." I sit down in the theater, and the movie starts. And for everybody that knows the opening of Goldmember, it's like the James Bond homage thing. I'm like, this does not feel like Scooby-Doo until it showed like the Austin Powers, like dun 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 dun.
Oh, she lied to you.
And I had no idea what movie I was walking into. And we were front row.
That's awesome. I've never had that experience.
We were literally front row, not like the sucker seats as we call it, like the two rows in the very front. We were the front in like the steps going up. And when we were on that front row, I literally remember laughing, like on the floor, literally in front of me, laughing my ass off at like the mole scene, like the mole. Like I'm dying laughing in this theater.
Okay, so because you just told me that story, I actually have one story as a younger kid that was without you at the movies. And it's the first experience I can remember where it sucked.
Oh, no.
And I'm not talking about the movie, because the movie was good. The movie's still good today.
Yeah.
But the experience was awful. And that was for the very first SpongeBob SquarePants movie.
Oh, no.
My family took me to it. I remember my dad, my mom, my sister. At the time, I was young, and my sister's 3 years younger than me, so she was very little. So she didn't care. But yeah, it was my aunt, my uncle, me, my mom, my dad, my sister. We went and saw a SpongeBob SquarePants movie on opening night, I think. And we didn't have advanced tickets, nothing like that at the time. I remember going up, and we almost left the theater because they were told the only thing left was front row. And this is back when, I mean, I'm sure there's still theaters like this now, but back when frickin' like there was no division between walking into the theater and having a bottom section and a top section.
Yeah.
Like it was all one thing, and the bottom was like way at the bottom. I remember looking straight up, like way up, and like my neck hurt the whole movie.
Oh.
And I sat there and I watched the whole first SpongeBob movie like that. You know what? As a kid, still loved it.
Yeah. I mean, it's. Do you not recall that we did see like a critically acclaimed film in the front row sucker seats, and we turned out to be okay?
You and I saw a critically acclaimed movie in the front seat?
I will give you a hint. We saw it with we made a friend in film school. It was our first movie that we saw right after our first week in film school.
Oh, was this in October?
Yes.
Were we seeing a classic kind of a Halloween movie?
No, but no, it wasn't The Shining.
Oh, I'm actually drawing a blank.
Argo.
Oh, sorry. My mind was going classic when you said that. Critically acclaimed. Sorry.
Oh no, that's okay.
Okay, so yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. No, I remember us seeing in the sucker seats, and it actually, I don't know, it didn't bother me, surprisingly.
You know what's weird? I don't remember seeing that movie that way. Interesting.
Oh, here's something. Remember the time we saw Real Steel?
Okay, so we're really getting into the bad stories now.
Why don't we just get those out of the way first?
Okay, so I'll add to that by saying something funny. So
okay.
I remember seeing Real Steel. You did not join me the day after that.
Yes.
Yeah, so for our listeners, Real Steel came out in the year of, I believe, 2013?
No, it was 2011.
2011.
Yeah.
Okay. So we saw Real Steel 2011, and I believe it was about 30 minutes before the movie ended. Right as we were going into like the third act.
Yeah.
There was a scene of Hugh Jackman and his son walking down a hallway, and he was like talking to him and pointing at him. The screen froze, but we heard the audio. So we could hear the next few scenes of the movie before the employees came in and told us that the movie was going to be paused and stopped and that they couldn't get it to go. Like, they couldn't get the film to finish. So we basically got handed free tickets and were told to leave. So, again, for our listeners, Cody did not join me the next day, but I went with another friend to go and rewatch the movie and finish it because I was a big fan of the movie and I was pissed that I could not finish the movie.
I think I went home after seeing it and I was like, fuck it, like I'll just pirate the movie and just watch the rest of it bootlegged. But then until I showed my parents when it was available to watch on at home, then I sat down and watched it, and it was so strange because when we were watching it in the theater, like the way it was cutting in that hallway, I thought it was intentional. I thought it was just kind of jump cutting and do a stylistic thing. But until it was like frozen on there and you're hearing like the argument breaking out in the alleyway or whatever.
You could tell there was an issue, yes.
I was like, wait a minute, there's something's up. Yeah, like it was awkward. And that was the first time, like, because that was digital. This is like an experience you get when like the tape projector fucks up back then.
Also, for our audience here,
yeah.
We saw this movie on the only IMAX screen in Windsor.
Right. Oh my
so
God.
We were like really hyped up to see this movie on that screen too at the same time.
Here's a question. Can you recall any movies you saw in the theater where you were the only person in it?
By myself or with someone else?
No, you were just by yourself. You had the whole theater to yourself.
Went to the theater alone and saw it by myself?
Yes.
Actually, the answer to that would be no.
I'm sorry.
I've gone
sorry,
to a few movies with someone else.
Sorry. I'm saying you are the only human being that is inside the auditorium while the movie is playing.
Yeah, so went to the movies by myself and only saw it by myself.
Right. Like there's no strangers in the theater.
I want to say the answer to that's no. I've been to the movies a couple times. Well, actually, so I never took the time to think about my theater experiences before this podcast, I guess to keep it fresh for everybody, but now I'm finally realizing one, and it's actually with you, where we were the only two people in the whole theater.
Yeah.
That was back in, I think, 2000, I want to say 2009, and that was for Your Highness.
I think it was 2010 or 11.
Yeah, one of those years, but it was for Your Highness.
Yeah, Your Highness.
And for our listeners, Cody started like walking up and down the aisles watching the movie, and I agree. This is because the movie was so atrociously bad and unfunny.
It is so unfunny, and I mean, there's a reason. I guess there's a reason why we're the only two in the theater. But it's so funny. I didn't even remember that I was doing that, walking up and down the aisles, because that literally jogged another memory. My mom and I saw Without a Paddle probably the last week that it was in the theater in 2004.
Not a great movie, but that movie's also amazing.
Without a Paddle,
love it.
We were the only two.
Love watching that movie.
We were also the only two in the theater.
That's crazy.
And she went to the bathroom, and she always brings it up saying, Cody, like, he sat over in that seat. He was just walking up and down, doing whatever he wanted in the theater. Like, I was like, oh, I have this whole place to myself. I'll just do whatever I want.
I can remember theater experiences where nobody else was in the theater. I just can't remember ever where there was a time where I went alone to do that.
Oh, I can
remember I went with my sister.
Yeah.
To see... I mean, obviously, a childhood favorite Disney Channel movie of mine is a movie called Motocrossed.
Oh, you saw that in the theater?
That's a late 90s movie. No, Disney Channel movie.
Oh, Disney Channel, okay.
Because of that movie, I was just a fan of, like motocross, like dirt bikes and stuff like that at the time. So when a movie hit theaters that was called Supercross, at the time I thought, oh, is this like a loose sequel to that or not? I don't know. But it was like PG-13 bordering on R. And it was only, but in Canada, it was only PG. So I went with my sister to see that, who's 3 years younger than me, and I saw that movie at like 13 years old.
Oh, jeez.
And I was shocked at that age because I'm like, there's like sex scenes in that movie and everything,
Right.
and I'm like, whoa, I'm with my sister right now, and she's a little young for this stuff.
That's
I'm
always-
like, I don't know why this movie is PG-13, PG in Canada.
That's always an awkward experience when you're like, it's more back then, but like when you're watching a movie with your family and there just happens to be a sex scene, and it's just like, I'd rather be somewhere else right now.
Especially when you're younger.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm going to jog your memory. You told me that you saw a movie here in Toronto and you came back going, dude, I was the only one in that theater, and it was opening weekend. It was that Vin Diesel movie.
Which movie?
That Vin Diesel movie, The Last Witch Hunter.
Oh, you're totally right. Yeah. Okay. Yes, I remember being the only one in that theater. You know what though? I think I might have sent you a picture of me being the only one in that theater. And then I think as the movie was starting, I want to say like one more couple showed up to watch it.
Fuck, I hate when that happens. That happens to me so much.
I think literally like me and two other people were in the theater.
I mean, not that I care. It's just like, I mean, there's always sort of this like growing paranoia that I have about the theater, like where it's just like, okay, like if I'm not going to be the only one in the theater and there is somebody else, just please.
Then I would rather have like 20 more people show up.
Well, I'd say just please behave. Just no.
Oh yeah,
no,
behave
no,
for
no,
sure.
yeah.
Yes.
Because okay, this is the last story. This is the last bad story I'm gonna say, and then we'll move. I'm gonna move on to talking about good
Ooh,
stuff.
I don't know about that. I might have a couple more.
Okay, well, I have the only terrible experience that I ever had at a theater, A Quiet Place, and it happens.
Oh, the first one. I remember this story.
And it happens to be the one movie that I wanted not a single person to talk, because I wanted to be in the same shoes as these characters I'm watching. Just
And
no sound,
just before
no
you
talking.
finish telling this story, I want to say to our audience that I literally had the exact opposite experience as Cody for the first
Fuck
Quiet Place
you.
movie, because my theater
Fuck
was
you.
dead silent. I didn't hear a peep. Nobody left or walked in. Like literally nothing. I had the best experience for this movie. Okay, Cody, continue your story.
Why don't you just count your blessings too and go fuck off? Fuck it. Jesus Christ. Because 10 minutes into this movie, like literally after the opening like credits, not even the credits, it was just the opening title sequence, some woman was just like sitting in one of those D-box seats, like the ones you reserve to have the seat jostle and all that stuff. I can hear an argument breaking out at like the top row of like some guy going, "You're in my seat," and she's like, "No, I'm not." Just a complete argument. He leaves, gets security or whoever it was, maybe some employees, manager or whatever, and she's not giving up the seat. And then the house lights turn on and the movie pauses, and I turn around and it's just like this white trash woman that's just like causing a ruckus, not wanting to get up. Everybody's heckling her, and she's just getting off at just everybody just like, rousting her. And eventually the cops had to come, and it was so funny, the cop going up the stairs, people were like, "Yay," and he like just like takes a bow. It's so funny, like that part of it looking back. But it was very frustrating because like I was immediately taken out, and like finally they got her out. They were doing like the na 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 na, hey good.
Oh wow.
Somebody threw their fucking drink at her, like right at her face, and like that's assault. That's crazy. And I'm like, oh my god, this like it's not gonna calm down in here, is it? Like it's done. And
Right.
the management was nice enough to actually say, okay, everybody's gonna get a free voucher at the end of the movie. We're going to rewind the film 5 minutes ago. But it was still awkward even after the movie resumed it, because it was almost too quiet. And I couldn't shake the experience. It was like anxiety. I was shaking. And then ever since I saw that movie, I've just been like kind of cynical and like, oh, all right. If anybody coughs, if anybody makes a sound, if anybody talks, I'm just gonna be like fucking on edge. And then, funny enough, it wasn't until the pandemic where I didn't see like a movie for almost like a whole year. Like going back to the theater, that anxiety was gone. I was just like, oh, all right, whatever. That person's on his phone over there in the background. Okay, whatever. I'm still in the movie. Oh, that person's talking. Oh, doesn't bother me. I think just taking a long break from the theater just made me like kind of not be so on edge. So I have COVID to thank for that. Well, what are the crazy ones? You're the worst ones you were thinking of.
Okay, so I will say this: they're one of the worst experiences I've ever had at the movies. Mm-hmm. And it's not even an amazing film or anything like that. It was more just a frustrating experience because I was enjoying the movie, and then something happened where all of a sudden I was aware of how the movie ends.
Oh no.
While watching it.
Oh.
And this is the Will Smith film, Hancock.
Right. I remember you telling me this is a weird glitch in the system.
So I went with there was 5 or 6 of us. We all were excited to see the movie. And so, yeah, this is back in what year did Hancock come out? Do you remember?
2008? Oh,
actually, yes, 2008. I remember seeing it just a year or two after the first Iron Man movie, actually.
Okay.
So we were watching Hancock, and I want to say about half hour into the movie, just as the first act was ending, you were getting into everything. You finally learned who all the characters were. All of a sudden, and I'm not going to ruin the ending for anybody, but you cut to the ending of the movie in the theater. The freaking projector in the theater skipped an hour to the end of the movie, and then I saw a character sitting in a hospital bed, and I'm like, oh, I guess something happens to this character.
Oh my god.
And then all of a sudden they pause it, and a employee walks in, and they say, we're just going to restart the movie for you. So I had to rewatch the first half hour of the movie before I could get to the end. And at the same time, knowing exactly what happens at the end.
Jesus. That's just terrible.
So
also,
it was just frustrating.
Wasn't there a time you told me, I think it was one of the Transformers movies, or maybe it was the first one.
I was going to mention this too.
Yeah, it was the first one.
Yeah, so towards the end of the first Transformers movie, it's when can't remember his name. Agent Simmons, actually. John Turturro.
Right.
It's when him and his crew are in a car, and it's right before the bridge scene, right before the final act of the movie. Their car gets smashed by one of the Transformers, and their car flips over. The scene happens upside down, but in the theater it wasn't upside down because at that moment the projector had flipped upside down and reversed the image upside down.
Jesus.
So for 20 to 30 minutes towards the end of that movie, we were watching it upside down. And I mean, to be fair, it's fine. We ended up getting a free ticket to see another movie for free afterwards. But I watched 20 to 30 minutes of the first Transformers movie for the first time upside down.
Jesus. Now that's Bayham if I ever heard it.
Well, to be fair, I'd rather watch the first Transformers movie over some of his movies that are more of the definition of Bayham.
Yeah, that's true. So can we put a cap on worst experiences?
No. We are not putting a cap on worst experiences. I have one left that we haven't mentioned, and it involves me and you.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to say this is while we were in film school, and I think you're going to clue into this as soon as I say the studio that did it. And the studio that we saw, it was animated, it was Pixar, and it was The Good Dinosaur.
Oh, right. Oh, my God.
So for our viewers, we went to the same film school in Toronto, and we decided to go to the theater in our building together.
Forgot about
And I would say The Good Dinosaur is about an hour and 45 minutes long, if memory serves me correct. And I would say for the first 45 minutes to an hour of that movie, the fire alarm in the building started going off, and the employees came in and said that it was a false alarm and that it would go away. So we stayed in the theater, except it continued every 10 minutes for like an hour straight. And we still watched the movie even though we could barely hear it.
I completely forgot about that. And you know what? What was growing into me? Of just fear of the fact that I'm like, oh my God, in about a month or two, I'm going to be sitting in this exact theater seeing Star Wars The Force Awakens. And if that happens during this movie, I don't know what I'll do. I think I might just cause a riot. I will literally, I'll set the theater on fire. I'll literally cause a riot.
I'm not going to lie. Every time I went into that theater for the next like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months or whatever, I honestly had the same fear.
Oh, it was the worst. I completely forgot about that.
Which is the reason I'm not even sure why I went back into that theater.
Here's something.
But yes, I can't think of anything horrible anymore, so we might as well move into the good experiences, unless you have something to add to that.
No. I have a great one to start off with, just saying, I think this might be the movie that, like, made you and I really, like, burst into the 2010s with, like, movie enthusiasm, where
I know exactly what movie you're gonna say, and you can say yes or no, but can I say the movie?
Sure.
Avatar. We literally came out of like Avatar saying like, that was the greatest movie we had ever seen, oh my God, when we should have said it. For a couple years straight, I'm pretty sure me, you, and Troy all thought that was the greatest film ever made. We
did. And in hindsight, I think we should have said it was the greatest experience we had ever seen.
Yes, I agree with that nowadays. It's definitely the best theater experience I've ever had.
The greatest?
As far as, like, we went to the States, we saw it on a massive IMAX screen. The 3D was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
There was no issues in the theater. So I think because of that reason, it might be, if it's not the best, it's like top 5.
Oh yeah, for
somewhere
sure.
in the top 5 for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and that movie really, like, kind of made us just not even branch off more and just wanting to chase after that same feeling again by just going to the movie theaters all the time. But like I recall us just watching way more movies at home at that time. Like, I'm
pretty sure that experience is actually the reason we went back the year after, back to Detroit to the same not the same theater, but to a similar IMAX screen over in the States. I believe it was called the Henry Ford Museum IMAX screen.
Yep.
That's where we went back to watch Inception.
Inception, yes. Yep. That was another great one.
That was a great experience as well.
Hell yeah. I mean, going in, because you and I really went crazy this past decade. Like, the 2010s was like us, just literally, we're right next to each other. And also just
especially from like I want to say 2011 or 12 till about 2015 or 16, we saw pretty much everything together.
Pretty much. Do you always remember our little tradition that we would do the second the movie starts?
Yes, and I try to keep up that tradition anytime we see something together nowadays, and that is we would, or was it more my thing or your thing?
I think it was you that started it, and we just kind of kept going with it.
Yeah, I think it was more my thing that started that tradition for the two of us, to the point where, like, I would just, like, lean over and I would whisper in your ear as the movie was starting the title of the movie. And, like, it got to the point where you just expected me to do it, and nowadays you're just disappointed if I don't do it anytime we see a movie together in theaters.
Because it's always, like, my response is always, let's do this.
Yeah, let's do this. And as much as I love seeing movies with anybody else, I miss hearing the let's do this in my ear.
Oh.
Every time I see a movie.
Do you always, just as a joke, just to confuse Gabby, do you do that with her just to say the movie right before you watch it?
I've actually never done that because I've never explained it to her.
But you should just see her reaction. Like she'll be like, "Okay, yeah, that's what we're about to see."
Maybe I will next time.
But like even in the
I will this Thursday for you.
What's this Thursday?
Okay. So I haven't even explained this to you yet. But speaking of bad theater experiences.
Oh, we're back to this?
I didn't think we were going to go back to this, but so on Thursday last week, I was supposed to see Black Adam. Then I told you that I couldn't do this podcast on Friday because we were going to move the tickets to see Black Adam.
Oh.
Then as that happened, something else happened that night where we couldn't even do that. I had to refund the tickets.
Oh no.
And so I was busy that night regardless. And then things led to another, and I had to cancel the third time we had tickets for it, which was Saturday night. Things just kept happening and we could not see the movie. And now, Thursday night this coming week, we're seeing Black Adam. So I'm seeing it a week after it opened.
Okay.
I should have already seen it by now, but...
Oh, okay. That kind of reminds me
So
of what happened.
no bad theater experiences. I'm just saying I've just had bad luck this week.
Oh, no bad luck of you trying to return tickets and trying to make up for it was anywhere near as bad as last year when you were trying to see Dune.
Absolutely. Dune is I think my worst experience. Sorry, not my worst experience at a movie theater ever, because that movie's amazing. I love it, just so our viewers know. That's the worst attempt I've ever had at seeing a movie. So the movie opened, last year in October, right?
Yeah, around this time, yeah.
The beginning of October?
Yeah, something like that. Like mid-October? I don't know.
Yeah, mid-October. I want to say it took me till almost December to see that movie after probably having purchased 5 or 6 tickets for it and returning them 5 or 6 times, because at the time I had this on top of my job that I had like a freelance job that happened to like fall at the same time as every time I had a ticket. It was just the worst timing for that movie, and I was pissed because that was like one of the top 2, 3, 4, 5 movies I wanted to see that year. It was so frustrating. On top of that, I guess you can put this as one of my worst experiences ever too, because I was out of town and I had a ticket to a movie after my job was done. And I was finally going to go see Dune, and I had no intention of seeing it in 3D, even though I was fine with seeing it in 3D. But once the movie started, I didn't know I even had a ticket to see it in 3D. And it started in 3D, and I had no glasses. So I missed the beginning of the movie because it started and it was blurry. So I left the theater to get glasses, except the glasses were not outside of the theater. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to freaking miss 10 minutes of this movie. I'm just going to go get a refund and I'm going to leave.
Oh, my
and
God.
It just really pissed me off. And yeah, so that wasn't like my worst experience at a movie ever, but it's definitely up there as far as inconveniences go.
Yeah, totally. Oh, my God. Oh, jeez. But
I saw that movie in theaters finally, and it was great. I love it.
Are you still doing scene points?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So and when you do like your movie ticket purchasing and all that, are you still always like row D or E in 15 or 16? Like you always choose like the ideal perfect spot?
Somewhere halfway up the theater, middle row, like center of the row, middle row, everything. As much as I can, I like being center theater.
You have to. You have to be. Like,
and it's funny because when we were back in high school, you're going to agree with me right now, I feel like. We just thought top row was the best thing ever.
Oh my God, yeah. Okay, I won't. Okay, going back to when we first saw Iron Man, I won't say who it is just for recording, but it's a cousin of our mutual friend who went with us that time, and I sat next to him, and he literally took off his pants in the theater. Like, I'm not kidding.
Why don't I remember this?
I don't know, but like he was such a clown. He was causing such a ruckus. I was happy that we were all the way at the top. He literally took off his pants because he thought it would be funny. He's just in his, I'm sitting next to him and he's in his boxers. I'm not kidding. I'm just like, this is so fucking
I do not
distracting.
remember this.
I'm not, yes, this is ridiculous. I was gonna bring up a little bit of a topic, but were you scared of the fate of movie theaters during the pandemic, or especially at the start of it?
Whoa. This question came out of nowhere.
Well, I know it's been like a very like, you know, it's a thing, and especially, you know, with inflation and of course the streaming services and all that stuff. It's just like, are you scared of the fate of movie theaters, or do you think it's gonna just
Sorry, was I or am I?
a bit of both, but maybe more at the beginning?
I would say I'm not, but I was when the pandemic started at the beginning of 2012.
You mean 2020?
Especially. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 2020.
No, we've been in a pandemic for 10 years.
I would say
you're right.
Frick. No, before the pandemic, no, and now I would say no as well. I'm still worried about the state of movie theaters nowadays, only because of how many things just instantly go to streaming.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I do love is when there's a great superhero story, like Marvel and DC, or like any freaking big budget action movie from Universal and all that stuff, like whatever. All that stuff's awesome if the movies are great. However, I will say I'm worried that's all we're ever going to get in theaters, because nothing makes money anymore.
Yeah.
In theaters. The problem is that studios will take a chance on a movie, and now with streaming options, when something makes $5 million opening weekend, and then the second weekend it makes under $1 million, 2 months, or not even 2 months, sorry, like 2, 3, 4 weeks later, it's going to be available on streaming, and that movie could win Best Picture at the Oscars. Like, it doesn't even matter how big of a movie you are at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point about just like how everything can get like dumped on, well, not dumped, that's kind of a bad term to use, but like when something is just sort of like available on streaming services, it gives people like a really bad kind of perception on just like, well, do I have to see this in the theater ever? I mean, there's a window that I could be able to see it, but I'd rather spend the convenience of being at home, and that kind of allows movie theaters to suffer a bit.
Like, for example, my favorite movie of the year so far, and again, this is a problem. What I'm going to explain right now is a problem. So, my favorite movie of the year as of now is Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah, mine too.
My third favorite film of the year, probably as of this moment, would be, just because I had such a great time watching it in theaters, would be Top Gun Maverick.
Mm-hmm.
My second favorite film of the year, though, is After Yang, which is an A24 film that I watched at home. And here's the thing. I would have thought the same way about Everything Everywhere All at Once in theaters as I would have watching it at home. I've watched it twice now, once in theaters and once at home, and I feel exactly the same way both ways. After Yang, I did not get to see in theaters. I watched it at home, and I love it. And Top Gun Maverick, here's the thing, though. I watched it in theaters. I believe the Blu-ray comes out in, I think, a week or two from now. When that comes out, I'm going to get it, and I'm going to watch it. I'm worried, though, that it's not going to be as great as it was in theaters because of how it was made. And, like...
I see.
The problem is like, that's a great movie, and Everything Everywhere All at Once is a great movie. It's tough to be able to think about your favorite film of the year without being able to see it in theaters, I guess. That's one of the main reasons why I think most movies that people believe in or studios believe in should still be put in theaters all the time. Because I think any theater experience will always elevate the movie itself, no matter how good or bad it is. Like, well, for example, if we didn't see Your Highness in theaters, we watched it at home, would we have been drinking to it or turn it off halfway through? Maybe. Like, we wouldn't have known that.
Yeah.
Like, it was horrible, and we didn't, and we were, you were walking up and down the aisles when we saw that movie. That's why I'm saying we might have drank to it or watched it at home and shut it off. Like, it all comes down to the experience you have with a film.
Yeah, totally. And I kind of think that a lot of things, like the timing was impeccable, where like 2019 was like it felt like the end of like an era in terms of like big massive blockbusters, like with the Star Wars Skywalker saga coming to an end, with the Infinity War Marvel saga coming to an end, and then this pandemic hits and movie theaters are just shut down.
The Marvel saga, I'm putting quotes up with my hands right now. The Marvel saga came to an end.
Yeah, the Infinity Saga. That's what I'm referring to. Like, that came to an end, and movie theaters are shut down for almost a whole year. And I think people sort of may have forgot what it's like to go back into a theater. Like, you know, crowd pleasers, like, you know, Spider-Man No Way Home, the Batman, like superhero movies, like all that aside, Top Gun Maverick was just kind of harkened back to just like the old-fashioned way of experiencing a blockbuster, which is very rare to find. And
it was like a modern 80s movie.
Yeah. But
placed in IMAX. Like,
but I feel like now, like, people, the focus is now shifted. Like, you know, superhero movies are not as popular. They're not seen as anything special that much anymore, because there's like streaming servicing shows, like not just the Disney Plus Marvel stuff, but like there's the Boys, there's stuff, you know, the HBO Max, all that stuff. Like there's so much now that you can just experience at home, that the wires have been crossed, where you're watching like a mini series and it has like the same production value as a film.
This is the reason I'm actually, and again, for our listeners, I don't care if I make myself look like an idiot here, or sorry, sound like an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
I still follow the Marvel franchise. I've loved it since Iron Man. No, it's not as great as it used to be, but I still have a blast watching everything.
Yeah, that's fine.
With that said, I would say the biggest problem with Hollywood films today, as far as going to the movies and experiencing something big, as far as big budget action films go, I feel like everything strives to be Marvel, and that is the problem. As much as those movies can be great, that's not you. When you're trying to make an action movie that's not a superhero movie, those movies are not you, and I feel like 75% of the movies nowadays are striving to be bombastic like that, and you can't do that.
Exactly. I'm gonna make a prediction here, and you can almost like I've said this for years, and I'm still gonna continue to say it. I believe in 10 years from now, Disney is gonna buy out all the movie theater chains. And they're going to promote it like, oh, look, it's now a little bit of Disney World in every single town and city for everybody. And it's just going to be nothing but Star Wars, Marvel, Pixar, Disney properties, all in these giant theaters. And as much as it's going to sadden me to see, like, you know, not a lot, like all the screens in this theater are going to be all Disney property, but the smaller nicher theaters are still going to have a place to release independent stuff. And I believe there's going to be a revival for a lot of films being re-released back in the theater. I think all the classic movies, everything, you can be like, oh, hey, wow, Wizard of Oz is going to play in the theaters again. Oh my God, The Matrix. Oh my God, you know, Back to the Future. Like all this stuff is going to be back again in the theater. And I see that happening. I see it being optional, where independent stuff can be in these niche theaters, and that's going to be awesome that there's still going to be a place. But you just look at the box office results lately, and it's just like Disney is literally dominating everything.
Well, I would say they're dominating everything for sure. But I would also argue with the fact that it's not in the news as much as far as box office goes. But I would say movies like I mentioned, like Everything Everywhere All at Once, or sorry, I need to pull something out of the back of my head right now. I would say a movie like The Black Phone.
Right.
Very low budget movies. So say they've 10 to 20 million dollars was spent on those movies, but they make over 100 million at the box office.
Right.
Those movies are never going to go away. Okay, well, The Black Phone is a bad example because studios are always going to make horror movies.
Oh, totally. Yeah,
for cheap.
You make
because they're going to make money.
Exactly.
Like they'll spend 10 million bucks and then the movie will make 100 million. Like they're fine. Like those movies are always going to make money. It's not like and here's the problem. I see superhero movies, and I've heard this from like online reviewers and online film fans and stuff for years now. I would say 5 to 10 years I've been hearing this because of how popular the superhero genre is right now. I can see, I don't think anytime soon because people still love watching superhero movies. But once the next phase of like Marvel ends with another Avengers series, I would say it's still going to be fine after that. I would say Marvel, like they announced the Kang Dynasty, and then Secret Wars is going to end this next part of the Marvel series.
Okay.
I would say 5 or 6 or 7 years from then, when they build up to the next Avengers team up film after that, I would say by that point, it might start getting way more tired than it is now. To the point where back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when people were getting tired of a freaking Western movie opening every 2 weeks.
Yeah, you brought that up before.
Because people have been comparing it over the last 5 years especially. I've been hearing it online where people are comparing the fact that 30, 40, 50 years ago, the way superhero movies are right now is how Westerns were. Like, everybody wanted to make a Western movie. And they made so many of them that you only remember a few of them because there was only a few great ones. But there were freaking Westerns coming out all the time back then. It's like superhero movies now. Yeah, there are a few amazing ones that everyone's going to remember. But in 20 years from now, there's going to be 300 of them made, and people will remember 30, 40, maybe 50 of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you brought up that comparison before, and it's actually pretty accurate. Like, where there's just always like the new thing that you see so much of that people will complain about, but then the landscape will change. There'll be something else that comes out, and yeah. And it's like the reason there's so many superhero movies and dramas and everything serious nowadays right now is because the transition. Sorry, I'm gonna get political for 2 seconds, even though I'm not a political person. In the least, I am not a political person, but I will say, don't worry, me neither.
What I've noticed is that in the next 10, 20 years from now, and it's only because of what's happening right now, is like there's a lot of superhero stuff, a lot of drama. I know I just said this, but it's because there's not a lot of comedy, there's not a lot of satire. None of this stuff works nowadays because people don't know what's funny. People don't know what's safe to do type of stuff, so they go with the stuff that's popular.
Right.
That's why we don't see any mainstream comedies. Like, I recently watched a movie called Bros, which was great. I loved watching Bros, except it bombed more than any freaking big budget Hollywood movie I've watched in the last 20, like maybe 10 years.
Yeah, that's
like
the
I
weird
looked
thing.
At the
Yeah, like Bros had great reviews, and I just don't know what
and
the
a great audience score.
I just don't know what the marketing was. Is that why people didn't? And also, there wasn't really that big movie stars in that movie. Like, I know Billy Eichner's popular from like Billy on the Street, but like, do a lot of people know what that is? You know?
Yeah, that might have been an issue as well.
Like, there wasn't like a big
But
draw of like a
look,
oh,
I'm
this
gonna
person's
argue,
in it. You know, like.
But I'll argue at the same time, word of mouth sometimes helps movies get seen.
Yeah.
And I would argue who was a big name when The Hangover came out.
Yeah,
I would say nobody.
But you're also talking about one that came out in like 2009. That was a different time. You know, like it's
that's exactly it though. It's a different time. I feel like people are way more like comedy is way more controversial than it used to be.
I wonder if like Bros would have like been successful if it was like put on like Netflix or something like that, or like Prime Video or something like that, like shown a little bit more.
See, that's the issue. I think that's the problem though. I feel like movies like Bros should be able to get and be profitable in theaters. I don't understand the reason why it's not.
Yeah, I don't know. But it's also like there's still people out there that are a little squeamish about going back to the theater. Like there's just a lot of factors right now. It's just things are kind of trying to sort itself out.
Yeah, but here's the thing though. I don't understand what gets people to the theaters anymore. Because everybody was excited to see Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield back in the Spider-Man movie. And that movie was like one of the biggest movies of all time. And then everyone wanted to see Top Gun and everyone wanted to see Tom Cruise and Top Gun Maverick. That movie became one of the biggest movies of all time out of nowhere. Nobody expected that. And then all of a sudden you get the first like I'm not even going to say big movie that's based on LGBTQ. I would say the first great Hollywood movie that's based on LGBTQ plus, because like I loved it. I thought the movie was great. So like I honestly I can't even see why people are or aren't seeing movies right now.
Yeah,
it's a big gray area.
It is.
I think it's because of. It's all about what people are talking about.
Yeah. And there's a lot of division with stuff too. Like, you know, fan bases can get divided with stuff. Needlessly divided, I might add.
Yes.
Like, and it's just it's a bit of a rocky kind of situation that I just hope that it doesn't like make companies suffer from all this. It's yeah. I
don't know. I feel it just sucks to see the comedy genre as far as Hollywood goes. Because yeah, streaming services get comedies all the time, but
yeah,
big budget Hollywood comedies that
they're...
aren't generic that you see on streaming services. There's so few of them nowadays because
it's very true. Yeah.
Look, I hate to get political, but nobody knows what to make fun of or joke about these days, and it's the truth.
Yeah, it is true. We were walking on eggshells. That's a totally different can of worms that like we can't.
Yes, I know we're getting political with this podcast. Let's stray away from this.
but here's one thing I'll ask you. There's two things I'll ask you. Maybe we'll call it. I want to know right now, and you can take a moment to think about this. And you mentioned it before when you brought up Avatar being like in your top 5 favorite movie going experiences ever. What really is like your top 3, your 3, 2, 1? Like what really is like something that you clearly have the biggest movie collection of like I've ever seen. It's a movie that you have at home and you throw it on and you're still brought back to the time that you saw it in the theater and you're just like, that's why I love sitting down in this place.
Well, I hate to sound like a broken record because I never took a lot of time to think about this. I don't really have a favorite experience. If you were to say yours and come back to me, I might have something, but I will start off this conversation I'll mention the movie Baby Driver.
Okay.
And that's only because I went to see that movie because I love the director's style. I love the cast. I loved everything from hearing what it was about. And then I went to see it, and that movie, I wouldn't use the words that it changed me, because that's not the type of movie it is. But that was the most fun I had in a movie theater, in terms of the movie being great filmmaking, great style choices, all of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And just pure fun and enjoyment that I've had in years.
Yeah.
And it's usually those types of films that do that for me, where I have the best experiences. In this moment, I would say Baby Driver. And if you want to go off on your favorite experience, while you do that, I will think further about maybe something else.
I mean, okay, I also don't want to sound as well like a broken record, but like for people that have listened to this show and just know like the types of things I'm passionate about, like Drive was a milestone movie, that seeing that in the theater.
Oh yeah, loved
like
Drive in theaters.
Blade Runner 2049, that goes without saying. Like that was 2 hours and 45 minutes where I was like, I'm not on Earth, I'm there. Like I forgot I was watching a movie that whole time. There's also like, I mean, okay, this isn't like a movie. I have to bring up this, but it's not technically the movie. This is probably the hardest I've ever laughed in the movie theater and it was with you. It was for that early screening that we saw for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where
oh wow,
when we saw like it with 2 weeks before the movie came out, and it's just clearly a bunch of fanboys. Like we're in a crowd.
Yeah, it was the best crowd we could have seen it with as well.
They were respectful and great during the movie, but it's actually the previews for this movie where they played that The Dog's Way Home, or The Dog's Journey Home, whatever the fuck that movie's called.
A Dog's Journey, yeah.
A Dog's Journey. And the trailer ruins the whole movie. It's basically the whole movie in like that 2-minute
Yeah,
thing.
You could hear everybody chuckling in the theater.
Everybody's laughing. Everybody's just like screaming at the theater. They're laughing.
Hey, by the way, to our listeners, in case anyone thinks that I have something against dogs, I love dogs.
Oh yeah,
I love all animals, just so everyone knows.
But the part at the end where like it just shows like the dog come, like they find the dog. Can we keep it? Yeah, sure. And then the dog runs away. And then in the trailer it shows the dog going home. At the very end, it shows the title and it's all sappy.
The trailer was the bullet points of the movie,
basically. And there's people in the theater standing up, giving it a standing ovation. Like I am just laughing my ass off. That was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Like I've ever had to experience with a crowd. I mean, of course, Avengers Assemble, and on your left it was like was a treat.
Well, yeah, those moments with the entire theater screaming and cheering. I'm never gonna forget that stuff.
I mean, I hope it doesn't become a reoccurring thing where it's like going to see movies is like going to see a sport game where you're just cheering at the goals.
Well, like, I'm fine. I'm fine with
this person's in the movie. Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. I'm fine with that being a Marvel thing only, because like that they've earned that thing.
Yeah.
They have so many characters in their franchise where if they build up to another big Avengers movie and they do something like that where they've earned it, that's fine. I hate seeing things where it's just like throw this in, throw this in, throw this in, throw this in.
Yeah.
Endgame earned that, where I was excited to see all of that happening.
Right.
Like it's different because like say if the next Avengers movie came out tomorrow and it was just like, oh, here's 20 new characters, have fun. They're gonna do they're gonna go on a great journey. I'm just like, well, yeah, I hope the story's good because I don't know who these people are. I don't care. Like they made me care about Endgame.
Yeah, totally. They built up to that. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm trying to think of any other ones. If you have ones, please tell me.
Okay, I'll end by saying my favorite theater experience ever. And it's not really my favorite. It's weird because it's not my favorite theater experience ever. Because I want to say that's probably Endgame, only because I invested so much time into that and it paid off.
Yeah.
As far as like a big theater experience and being with a crowd, I would say Avengers Endgame. However, I would say my favorite unexpected experience would have been when I was in high school, and it was with you.
Oh.
And we went to the movies, and this was back in 2010. And this is still my favorite film, probably of all time. And it's David Fincher's The Social Network.
Ah, okay.
And it's only because I saw the first couple trailers for it. It intrigued me. I was interested in the story. I'm like, oh, we're getting the behind-the-scenes drama of Facebook and all this kind of stuff. It just interested me enough to go see the movie on opening weekend. And then when we did, afterwards, I walked out. I'm like, there was something just special about that to me.
Mm-hmm.
That everything about it, like the filmmaking, the script, the directing, the score, like literally everything in that movie impressed me. And I think that's the movie I've gone back to most in my life to rewatch. I've probably watched that start to finish, eyes glued to the screen, 50, 60 times.
That's your favorite movie?
As of at this moment, there are a couple movies that rival it. Yes, there's like 10 movies out there where I could probably say, oh, that's my favorite, that's my favorite, that's my favorite, or like that could be my favorite. But when someone asks me what my favorite movie is, I'm just gonna say Social Network, and sometimes I juggle it with like I'm not gonna go into a whole argument right now of the other movie, but I would just juggle it with like Good Will Hunting.
Okay, yeah.
Those are two movies that I like juggle back and forth as my favorite. But Social Network is what I land on because arguably the filmmaking is better in Social Network than it is in Good Will Hunting.
Yeah, totally.
The script might be better in Good Will Hunting. I don't know. That's why I juggle them back and forth. But everything about Social Network just screams cinema to me, and I love David Fincher. I just love all of that, and seeing that movie in high school is kind of what made me get more into film and want to go to the movies every week and see what was new and see the best movies and like judge them on my own merits and that kind of thing. And I wish viewers had a way of seeing us right now because I just have so much stuff around here that's Social Network.
Yeah, you're surrounded by like a bunch of reminders. Yeah, photos and everything. You have a giant poster of it somewhere, don't you?
Yeah, it's not currently hanging. I have it in my closet.
Oh, there you go. No, okay. I do remember we saw that at the Lakeshore Cinema.
Yep.
That's like a little local one that's always it was always like the one that was just there, was closest to us. Like we would just go to just check out stuff there, even though they didn't have the best screen and sound. It was just kind of there, but it was always there for us.
Actually, that theater specifically has had my... that's where I had my Transformers experience, where the theater flipped upside down.
Oh, there you go.
And that's actually where the very first film I ever saw at Lakeshore Cinemas in our hometown is 2005's Fantastic Four.
Oh, 2005. Oh, okay. Sorry, I was thinking of the other
That was
one,
the first film I ever saw at Lakeshore Cinemas.
I can't even remember the first one I saw there.
I remember it opened that summer, and I'm like, oh, I want to go see something. Because I was only ever used to going... I would go with my parents out to the mall, to like Devonshire Cinemas.
Yeah.
Or I would go with a friend locally over to that Forest Glade. But then Lakeshore opened, and that summer, I'm like, I really want to see Fantastic Four. So I remember my parents dropped me and my neighbor off to go see that.
Nice. Oh, man, we could definitely go on about every single experience that we've ever had.
Well, if we go on for every experience, this will be a 5-hour podcast.
Okay. One more thing jumped in my mind, but then I'll ask you one more quick question, okay? But,
yep.
Okay, do you remember, this was around 10 years ago, like almost like 10 years ago, last month or so, like when we first moved to Toronto together, that 2.5 week gap that we had between moving in and starting film school, Can you list me right now all the films that we saw in that period of time?
Probably not, but I can list you. I can try. I can definitely list the first one we saw together.
Yes.
And that would have been the remake, which is 1,050,000,000,000 times better than the original. And that would be Carl Urban's version of Dread.
Yeah.
That was the first film we saw together moving into Toronto. I remember that.
The next one was Trouble with the Curve.
Trouble with the Curve, which was fine.
And End of Days or End of Watch, whatever it was called.
End of Watch.
End of Watch. You and I, we almost my God, we were so filled with life and love after we saw The Perks of Being a Wallflower.
I still love that movie. But I do admit you and I were probably overrating that movie a little bit.
Maybe it's just I don't know. It was just it felt good. We had a good time.
Perks of Being a Wallflower is great.
Yeah.
However, we thought it was just the greatest thing of all time when we saw it.
and the last one we saw was Looper.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, that one was great too.
And then that was it. Then we started film school, and then we just
saw Looper before we started film school.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. And then literally our film school is just
you know what? That whole year is starting to pop back into my mind. We saw Oz the Great and Powerful. We went to see
so many. Oh my God.
This Is the End. Oh no, not This Is the End. At World's Oh my God. At World's End is Pirates of the Caribbean.
The Granado one.
It's the Edgar Wright movie.
Yeah. At World's
with
I think
Simon
it's
Pegg. No, At World's End is Pirates of the Caribbean. The World's End is the name of the bar in the movie.
Yeah.
Yes, there we go. Sorry. Off on a tangent there.
But I mean, it was so convenient because we're literally in a film school that's 2 floors below us is the movie theater, so it was pretty convenient.
Yeah, that was very convenient, especially with a 24 screen theater that would show tons of indie films and everything we wanted to see.
Hell yeah.
I loved going there. I still rewatch this movie at least once a year. I loved going to that theater. I went one morning on a Saturday or Sunday to go see a movie called The Way, Way Back.
Right. Yep.
And that's such a feel-good summer feel of a movie. I probably watch that somewhere between May and August at least once a year.
Nice.
Still.
Awesome. I was gonna say one last quick question, and we'd be crazy to leave it out. But part of the going to the theater, what is always your go-to when you go to the concessions?
What's my go-to at the concessions?
Yeah.
Just a Coke or a Pepsi and a big bucket of popcorn.
Wow, you're pretty simple. I'm
However, I will say this. That's more if I'm with people. I'll get a pop and popcorn always. Mm-hmm. And 50% of the time that I'm alone, I would do the same thing. But I'm a little bit weird when I'm seeing dramas or a tiny indie movie or something like that. I don't feel like shoving popcorn on my face or anything like that. I'll literally go to the side concession stand and I'll get a coffee or a tea and then I'll go in and watch the movie just with that. I never go to the movies and order nothing.
Yeah, there's sometimes I'll bring maybe just my water bottle and then just kind of hide it. But I usually just stick to just getting the water bottles or something diet or zero, and it's always the Mars packets with the little Mars bites that I get.
Okay.
I'm not too big on popcorn, to be honest. I'll have maybe if you were next to me and you couldn't finish it, I'll probably just have one little handful and then I'm good. I'm not too big on it, to be honest.
Yeah, popcorn's I'm a big fan of popcorn as a snack. I would order it most times at the movies. I would make it at home. I would even order the caramel corn at the malls and bring it home to have a movie night at home. I love the idea of popcorn.
The better snacks are not available there, like chips, is because they're too fucking loud. You have to annoy the people at home when you're sitting next to them. Just
The reason I'm just gonna say that you're wrong on that is because I still frickin' hear that when every time someone orders a thing of nachos. It is chips. I hear people crunching on nachos throughout the theater.
Because that's what you want to hear. Oh my god. It's part of the movie going experience is having people munch and munch. It's so bad.
No. Nope. I'll get popcorn and pop, or if I'm alone and I'm seeing an indie movie or a drama, I'll get a coffee. Or I will say something that where I live right now, it's not even an option. But when I lived in Toronto, I loved doing it. I would get like a coffee and then like those little like pretzel bites or something like that. Just something simple.
Just don't do the movie theater hot dog, or else you'll end up sick as a dog like me. Like that happened to me.
I remember. We could go off on tangents of Cody feeling sick after a movie.
Oh god, it was disgusting.
Wait, for our audience, the movie that Cody is currently talking about right now is when I joined him to see 127 Hours.
That's right. And then I was sick as a dog, like the sickest I've ever been in my life after that. Food poisoning, a flu, I don't know what the fuck it was, but I lost like 15 to 20 pounds. I was sick in bed for 4 days. Ugh.
He's not lying.
I am not lying. It's the truth. All right, KJ. Man, you did a great job in this. You were so nervous. You're like, I
was not prepared at all for this one.
You did a great job, man. You did a great job. This was a great conversation. We hit on everything. We got plenty. We definitely got plenty during this.
And I can't wait to keep going to the movies with you, even though it's a little more spread out these days.
Yeah, of course. We got stuff on the horizon. We got volume 3 of Guardians. We got Dune Part 2.
I am seeing Avatar: The Way of Water with you this December.
Yeah, we got Avatar 2. Let's go see Barbie for God's sakes.
Oh, I'll come to Toronto to see Barbie.
Let's go see Barbie. That has my fucking interest. I'm not kidding. That has my whole heart.
I feel like the 4 of us could probably see Barbie.
Oh yeah, double date. Absolutely. All right, speaking of that, let's get back to our ladies. All right. Thank you so much, KJ. This was
I also got no sleep last night, so I'm about to go get some sleep.
Yeah, we need to go get some fucking sleep. Thank you, man. This was great. You did a great job.
All right, I was nervous about this one, but thanks.
and you referred to the viewers so much, our audience, our listeners. That's
only because you've made me accustomed to doing that.
It's the beautiful audience you need to refer to them as.
Okay, I'm going to say goodbye to Cody, and I'm going to say goodbye to this beautiful audience.
Thank you, everybody. The beautiful audience, you're listening so beautifully. It's time to put a curtain, to close the curtains for the night, and subscribe to So to Speak. Go listen to more stuff, and I'll definitely see you on the next one. And KJ, see you at the movies?
Absolutely.
Fuck yeah.
Subscribe.